Welcome to the second session of the course Production, Logistics and Transportation Management. Let's continue with our introduction. In the last session, we made an exercise with those students that were online, and you had a short brainstorming session about what comes to mind when you think of a logistics systems. Which logistics systems do you know? What comes to mind? And in this exercise, the result was the following. You identified rightfully production systems, transportation systems, warehousing systems. Related to warehousing, of course, the problem of managing inventories. The port was mentioned, the airport, seaport, airport, dealing with customers, of course, and so on and so on. So let's go into some more examples of logistics systems. One example related also to the headline of this course, Production Logistics, is a production system, a manufacturing system. In this example here you see an automotive assembly chain where robots construct automotives. And during this production process, of course, on the high level you have the supply chain where parts are produced in different factories all around the world. But on the factory level, inside the factory, you also have a lot of logistics processes, which we call here production logistics. So in order to produce something, your logistics needs to be right, and the flow of the produced goods, here the cars, needs to be controlled through the factory. The parts that we want to add to these cars, that we want to assemble, have to be at the right places at the right time, though this is clearly a logistics task. Another manufacturing example is given in this picture, where you can recognize these red boxes. Probably some screws or some parts are in these boxes. They are over here behind in the bag and behind here. And we need these tools, these small tools, to produce something. When these boxes are empty and we need more supplies, the worker can get these supplies from this small train, or we call this milk run system. These boxes are traveling through the factory floor and provide the replenishment materials to these workstations. It's a nice example of a logistics system in the production context. What else is there? Well, here's the different logistics system. You mentioned the port logistics in your terminology, in your keywords, and this is an example of a container terminal inside a port. Of course, this is a very fancy picture during the nighttime, but what is essential, we need to manage the containers. We need to know at which position is which container stored when we want to access a container, because we have to load it onto a ship or onto a truck. We need to know where the container is, how to get to this container. We need to control these cranes, these gantry cranes, to pick the containers. Here next to the container blocks, the trucks are coming to pick the container. They drive on these streets, and then the crane picks the container and lifts it onto the truck. Of course, you need to pre-plan these operations so that you have a good idea where is the container. And one key performance indicator is usually the number of moves by the crane you need to make in order to load the crane onto the truck. So for example, if you pick a container that is in the bottom, you first have to remove the containers on top of this. Those containers that stacked are on top of the target container. And if you have no plan, maybe you need to make a lot of idle moves with the crane, and then this takes a lot of time. If you pre-plan the sequence of truck arrivals a little bit more, then you can reorganize the positions of the container, and on the one hand you can try to reduce the turnaround time in the trucks, or you can try to reduce the crane picking activities. In particular, you can try to reduce the crane picking activities during high working load times. Yeah? You can plan them in times where the port is less busy, so that your container terminal in the port operates more efficiently. Another problem inside or outside a container terminal might be the arrival of trucks when containers are brought to the container terminal, and long queues might arrive. So usually we have something called like a truck appointment system that should manage the arrival of the truck in order to reduce the waiting time of these trucks. Different continents, this is handled in different ways, but if this is handled in the wrong way, then long waiting times are the consequence, meaning you have to bring the container very early, some days before the ship arrival, which leaves you less flexibility in producing the items.